What is up, Watch fam? Happy Thursday, and welcome to this week's episode of ASKTNH Live. I am Christian from Theo and Harris, and I'm answering Instagram Watch Geeks live questions on Instagram at Theo and Harris. All right, before we jump in, a quick wristwatch check. I am wearing my personal Datejust, a reference 1601 by Rolex. Beautiful light gold bezel, powder blue dial, and I'm wearing it beside a really beautiful bracelet that we recently added to the shop. It's our collaboration with Florentine artisan Paolo Penco, a company third generation at this point that makes all of their jewelry and accessories and art really by hand in a little workshop just a couple of blocks away from the center of town in Florence. Really proud of them. Okay, let's get into some watch talk. Okay, good question. What are the rarest 1601 configurations? Well, I'm talking about my Datejust, a watch that I'm very passionate about as a reference, a cornerstone of the watch shop at theoandharris.com. The Datejust is something that I've dedicated most of the last 4 years to. It's a watch that I've written endless love letters to. You fall in love with your first watch. And it just happens to be a wonderful watch. But even if it wasn't, I would still have great admiration for it because it holds such a special place in my heart. But that being said, it is a wonderful watch with very rich history. A watch that's basically remained unchanged since its release in 1945, I think. It's really hard to beat that. Now, rarest configurations, you have to go into the world of gilt. Gilt is very rare, which is a Rolex. I was going to say Rolex. It's not just Rolex. Many brands in the 20th century used a gilt technique. It's black lacquer paint over a yellow gold. I'm blanking out. Anyway, gilt watches. It's a big thing in vintage Rolex and Submariners and Datejusts. So that's a big one. Radium Datejusts, which were produced until 1964. So 63 was the last year. That's a really kind of rare and very desirable Datejust. Oftentimes those watches feature alpha hands as opposed to stick, which to me is very interesting. I think that it adds a lot to the aesthetic. So there are a lot of different, rare examples, but those two. Obviously blue dials are very rare. The blue dials are rare, not just in Datejusts, but in all non-sport Rolexes. 34mm Rolex dates in blue are very rare. Datejusts are very rare in blue. It's one of the most beautiful and one of the most rare dials. Wait, here's a question. What's the biggest problem with current watch culture? Good question. I guess it's elitism. Watch culture, probably like a lot of other cultures in the luxury space, is filled with with snobby people, with elitists that I was going to say spend a lot of money, but they can spend no money too. People, because watches in many ways are a status symbol, because whether you're talking about monetary value or you're talking about the complexity or the historical interest of a watch, people always are trying to rank themselves. My watch is more expensive. Oh yeah, well my watch is more interesting. And the culture that's kind of been created is very contentious. I don't really involve myself in the culture. That's why I don't really, associate with all too many different, watch communities. I like our community. I love the Theo and Harris community because we don't nurture that culture. I tell you to get the fuck out. If that's the way you are, then just leave. That's not for me. It's not for us. It makes something that's supposed to be enjoyable, something that's supposed to be a fun hobby, and turns it into something that's nasty and bitter and just it's gross. It's just pathetic in my opinion. So that's the biggest problem with watch culture. Here's another good question. Is appreciating yellowed tritium a phase in the watch community? Let's talk about this for a second. Tritium is a luminescent paint that Rolex used between 1964 and when did they phase it out? In the 80s, I think, whenever they moved into Luminova and then Super Luminova. It was used for quite a long while in Rolex watches exclusively. Tritium has this very interesting way about it, right? It has many effects. Sometimes the tritium plots themselves will remain intact, and they will custard with age as opposed to stay, white. I think this effect is absolutely gorgeous. I think it looks beautiful as an accent on a silver dial or a black dial or a gray dial. I love the custard detailing. On Tudors, it's very interesting. I found, unlike Rolex's, the mixture of tritium that Rolex was using with Tudor had a nasty habit to decay on a dial. It's something that I personally like. I think that it separates those watches. It's not ugly, it's just different in my opinion. Some people hate it. We had a Tudor date day in the watch shop at Theo & Harris with this exact decay. This is not uncommon decay. It's very common, actually. The mixture that Tudor was using, that's something that happened to it. Just like, certain Rolex dials were finished in a different way and were more susceptible to wear and patina. Just different mixtures, different production, lines had that. So I don't think it's a phase. I think it's widely held that it is beautiful, and beauty doesn't go out of style. Another good question. Are all/most of the Theo & Harris watches offered without box and papers? And the answer is yes. In the vintage world, it is quite rare to find a watch that has retained its original box and sales paperwork. And two, when the original box and sales paperwork are included, there brings a hefty premium to a watch that personally, oftentimes I don't care for. As a consumer, I don't care for it. So I have a hard time selling it. I can't speak passionately about the inclusion of box and papers. I can speak passionately about a new old stock watch or a full kit in certain cases, but across the board, not something I'm interested in. So no, the Theo & Harris watches usually don't. That being said, we are more than happy to always, upon request, provide appraisal documentation or authenticity documentation for insurance purposes or anything like that. More than happy. So that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you love watches, go ahead and like this video and subscribe to the Theo & Harris channel, and do not forget to check out the watch shop at theoandharris.com. I'll see you all tomorrow.